Lucy, let me just ask, just in general, because I don't think most people are aware of this. Is kids hungry, is that a serious problem in this country?
It is. It's a huge problem in this country. So we see today about 1 in 5 kids in this country going hungry. The food
go to bed hungry every day.
Yep, or just really don't know where their next meal is coming from in many ways. And
One out of 5?
1 out of 5 struggle with hunger. And that's numbers that USDA put out last fall that they do, every year they put out their food insecurity numbers that really look at, how kids in this country are struggling with hunger and how families are addressing that issue. And summer is a really hard time for low-income families, in particular, as we think about, we just passed Memorial Day weekend and going into the summer months as schools are letting out. It's an incredibly challenging time for families all over the country.
Right. Now, where are these kids live? These are inner city kids?
So I think what's interesting about the way that we're seeing childhood hunger and poverty in general in this country today is that it exists everywhere. It exists in every congressional district. It exists in suburbs. It exists in rural communities, in urban communities.
You don't think of suburbs as pockets of poor.
You don't, but we've seen research coming out over the last few months, all over the country that we're seeing increasing numbers of low-income families living in suburban areas, which can be challenging for a lot of reasons. When kids are trying to access programs, and we're going to be talking a lot about the summer meals program today, but suburban areas just often aren't set up to meet the needs of families that are living there. A really interesting report that came out from the Southern Education Foundation just a couple of months ago said that today, for the first time in more than 50 years, more than half of all public school kids are from low-income families. It's a pretty staggering number. Yeah.
Wow.
Half.
It is. More than half.
That's terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as long as the public schools have just evolved into the depository for poor kids, right?
I think, the schools are dealing with a lot of issues as public school districts all over the country are trying to figure out the best way to make sure that kids are showing up ready to learn, are doing well in their tests, and are really graduating from high school with the best possible future.
Right.
But what we've seen is that if kids are coming to school hungry, there's really very little our education system can do to support them once they get there we've lost before we've begun.
Okay, before we get to the summer program, let's talk about the YearRound program, or particularly during the school year,
Sure.
at any rate. What are we doing to reach these 1 out of 5 kids?
Sure. So the school breakfast program, the school lunch program, and the after-school meals programs. They're not in every school, but most schools across the country now operate school breakfast programs, especially in low-income communities. We've seen a great, really promising increases in the number of kids that are showing up to school eating breakfast or getting breakfast when they get to school.
Right. Otherwise, by the way, if I just jump in, otherwise they wouldn't get breakfast. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. A lot of these kids are coming from families where they just don't have the resources at home to be able to provide kids breakfast. So we did a study that just came out called Hunger in Our Schools that found that across the country we surveyed public school teachers and found that 3 out of 4 teachers see kids coming to school hungry on a regular basis. And we know that the school breakfast program is the best way that we can combat that, and we can make sure that kids are coming to school ready to learn and they're starting their school day ready to learn. One of the challenges that we've seen in the school breakfast program is that today only about just a little more than half of all kids who are eligible to get a free breakfast at school are actually getting one. So traditionally, the way that school breakfast is served is in the cafeteria before the school day starts, which is really hard for a lot of kids. Buses sometimes don't get there on time before the school day starts. There can be a lot of challenges in making sure that kids have access to that breakfast before the school day starts. There's also a stigma issue. Kids don't want to be in the cafeteria before the school day starts, right?
Sure.
So what we have done with the No Kid Hungry campaign and working with schools and states all over the country is to make breakfast a part of the school day. So we work with programs called Breakfast in the Classroom, Grab and Go Breakfast, where kids eat breakfast together at the beginning of the school day. We've seen huge increases in the number of kids that are eating breakfast. Teachers across the country love it because they know that their classroom full of students has had a great breakfast and they are ready to start their math homework or anything that they need to right when the school day starts.
They're going to be better primed if they've had
Exactly.
Yeah. So then you said and now the school lunch program is the next step, I guess, right?
Yep. So school lunch program. So you don't have quite as many barriers with the school lunch program because kids are already at school. Exactly.
Yeah,
they're in the cafeteria together, but it's still really important to make sure that schools
and this
are
after school snack or whatever you call it.
Yeah. So the after school meals program is operating in a lot of schools and through many community organizations as well. Organizations like Boys and Girls Club, YMCA's are able to operate the after school meals program as well. It's a really important program for kids, not only to have a great meal when they leave the school, to have an extra snack when they are out of school, but also to make sure that they get some great enrichment programming after school as well.
Are they getting healthy stuff?
They are
in these meals.
Yeah, absolutely. The meals all meet nutritional standards. We visit schools all the time, and we see kids eating healthy cereal and getting great nutritious meals for breakfast, lunch, and after school.
Mm-hmm. So they're not candy snacks or something like that.
No, they all have to meet nutritional standards.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So now the challenge is, and why we wanted to talk to you, because obviously kids are all getting out of school right now. So a lot of them, that's their meeting place, right, for these meals. What happens to them in the summer?
Yeah, so summer is a really hard time. So one of the things that our Hunger in Our Schools report found was that as teachers are finishing up their end of school testing and getting hopefully excited for their summer vacations, they're not just thinking about what they're going to do for the next 3 months over the summer and how they're going to clean up their classrooms. 8 out of 10 teachers are worried that their kids aren't going to get enough to eat over the summer months. And they're thinking about what that's going to mean when they come back to school in the fall. We have a federal summer meals program right now that operates through schools, through community organizations, again, great churches, Boys and Girls Clubs, that operate sites where kids can come and get a free meal during the summer. And those are great, and they're working great for some kids. But today the program is only reaching about 1 in 6 kids who needs a meal. So 1 in 6 kids who get those free or reduced price meals at school, the lunches at school, are getting a summer meal. And that's why we're so focused on making sure that we're doing everything we can to increase that number, but really to help look at the ways that we can improve the way that the program is operating.
Well, how do you, what can you do? It's just, I guess it's a double problem. If the meals are all available, then how do you get the kids to a spot where they can get the meal?
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly right. It's exactly the challenge. In some communities, it works great, right? In D.C., you don't have any sort of rural issues. You're able to get kids to, school nearby that's operating the programs. The real challenges that we see are in rural areas, in places where a site might be close by, but it might be across an 8-lane highway that kids have to get to. One, as we talked about, sort of the suburbanization of poverty. So today, 1 in 3 of low-income kids who are getting a free or reduced price lunch at school live in communities that can't even operate the summer meals program. So those sites that we talked about, they can only operate in programs that are sort of predominantly low income, where at least 50% of the kids are getting free meals. But because of suburbanization of poverty, of sort of the way that we've seen poverty spread across the country, 1 in 3 kids are not living in an area that can even have a summer meal site. So we think that there's a lot of ways that actually Congress can help address this issue this year.
What are you asking Congress to do this year?
Sure. So Congress right now is looking at the Child Nutrition Bill, which includes the summer meals program. And we think that there's a lot of proposals that could help kids get the meals that they need during the summer months. Really what it comes down to is communities and states just needing more options to be able to get these meals to kids, especially in rural areas. For those 1 in 3 kids who live in a community that aren't able to operate an open summer meal site, we think that there's been these great demonstration projects that have been running all over the country that have shown really promising results. One of them, it's called the Summer EBT program, and it would actually give families, low-income families whose kids are getting free meals at school, gives them basically an additional grocery benefit during the summer months to help them supplement the meals that they would have otherwise been getting at school. We've seen really promising results, reduce food insecurity, reduces hunger by about 1/3 for these kids, and we think that it's a proposal that certainly should be available to states.